Ladies and gentlemen, boys and ghouls, it's time for Below Grade Level. Listener beware, you're in for a scare.
Hello and welcome to Below Grade Level, the show where we take the books that we read as children and read them as adults and ruin them. I am one of your hosts, Jonathan Eaton, and with me as always on today's episode are Chris Zaleski and Bekah Eaton. If you are listening to Below Grade Level frequently, last episode was the last part of Babysitter's Club, Book 1 that we read, and so now we are back to a little bit of legacy content, so this episode 16 and the following two episodes will be us reading Goosebumps, number 3, Monster Blood, which is a really good one. If you remember reading Goosebumps as a kid, you probably remember Monster Blood, like at least the cover, the concept of Monster Blood. I think there was an episode of the show about the Monster Blood. I don't remember. I know that this was like one of the most popular of the Goosebumps stories. There were at least 2 sequels, maybe 3 sequels. I know I had Monster Blood 2 and I had Monster Blood 3 as well, which, you know, depending on how long the show goes on, we might read them. We might get to them. This episode is the first third of Goosebumps Monster Blood. I don't know off the top of my head which chapters those are, but I will find out and put them in the episode title. So if you're listening to this, you'll know. Our guests on today's episode are James Finn, Jeff Burkins, and Daine Birch. Before we get started, I wanted to give a content warning, which you might be saying to yourself, Jonathan, I've listened to this show. You guys say some pretty not safe for work shit all the time. Like, this entire show is a content warning to some people. Like, I know that we joke about stuff all the time. We say dirty stuff all the time. I mean, it's fun to add that into these books because these books are for children and they're usually about children. So it's fun for us as we're reading them, and sometimes necessary as we're reading them because we'll get bored and we need to make it adult somehow. But so here's the deal. In putting these episodes together, I was just giving myself a little bit of a crash course and refreshing myself what happened in Monster Blood, and I noticed something that we do, and by we I mean myself and Chris, not Bekah. There is a character in the book who is deaf, and we do a deaf voice. It's very offensive. It's not funny. In retrospect, it was very ill-advised, and we keep doing it. Like, we double down on the joke, and it's not funny. It's super offensive. It's very mean. You know, like, I can't. We recorded this years ago, and like, that's not an excuse at all. I'm just saying we recorded this years ago, and, you know, like a lot of things that you do, and then you look back on you think to yourself, oh, why did I do that? So in listening to this, I just think, why did we do that? Why did we do it? Why did we think it was funny? It's not. So if you're very offended by that, I know. So am I. I am offended by myself that did that. It would have been like, maybe it would have been funny if we did it like once and then stopped and we're like, okay, got that out of our system, but no, but like we keep it up, and it's just like, it's low-hanging fruit, and it's not, you know, I'm not saying that comedy needs to be kind, but it's rude. It's not cool. It's not cool. So that's my spiel. I'll say it again probably on the next episode because we keep fucking doing that voice. That's the blemish on Monster Blood. Without further ado, though, I'd like to get into it. So here is part 1 of Goosebumps Monster Blood. Enjoy. So this is Goosebumps number 3, Monster Blood.
One everyone's been asking for.
The cover's got a staircase with a bunch of slime dripping down it.
And some glasses.
It says it's a Monster Blood drive. And so to catch you up on what we do.
At the top of the back, it says blood everywhere.
So much blood.
To catch you up on what we do, we each read a page, pass it to the next person. We come up with voices for the characters as we go. So since we're starting this...
Change their names sometimes.
Yeah. Change their names. You can add stuff in there.
Yeah, you can ad-lib shit.
Ad-lib. We just have a whole lot of fun with it.
And is this one also in the first person? And does it also follow a young girl?
I'm gonna guess it's siblings, because every single one of these fucking books is siblings. Okay.
I think R.L. Stine was an only child.
Chapter 1. I don't want to stay here. Please don't leave me here. Evan Ross tugged his mother's hand, trying to pull her away from the front stoop of the small, gray shingled house.
It's not first person.
Mrs. Ross turned to him, an impatient frown on her face. Evan, you're 12 years old. Don't act like an infant, she said, freeing her hand from his shitty grasp. I hate when you say that, Evan exclaimed, like an infant, angrily crossing his arms in front of his chest. Softening her expression, she reached out and ran her hand tenderly through Evan's curly, carrot-colored hair. Ugh. And I hate it when you do that, he cried, backing away from her, nearly stumbling over a broken flagstone in the walk. Don't touch my hair, I hate it!
What the fuck is a flagstone?
Jesus, what does this kid not hate, am I right?
That was the original title of the Flintstones.
The Flagstones?
Yeah.
Jesus Christ.
I would know that.
Okay, so you hate me, his mother said with a shrug. She climbed up to the 2 steps and knocked on the front door. You still have to stay here till I get back.
Why can't I come with you? Evan demanded, keeping his arms crossed. Just give me one good reason. Your sneaker is untied, his mother replied. So, Evan replied unhappily, I like 'em untied. You'll trip, she warned. Mom, Evan said, rolling his eyes in exasperation. Have you ever seen anyone trip over his sneakers because they were untied? Well, no, his mother admitted, a smile slowly forming on her pretty face.
You got me there.
All of these, this is what it says. Her pretty face. You just want to change the subject, Evan said, not smiling back. You're going to leave me here for weeks with a horrible old woman, and Evan, that's enough, Mrs.
That's
Ross
not a premise
snapped.
that's ever been done before.
Tossing back her straight blonde hair.
Oh.
Catherine is not a horrible old woman. She's your father's aunt, your great aunt, and she's a total stranger, Evan cried. He knew he was losing control, but he didn't care. How could his mother do this to him? How could she leave him with some old lady he hadn't seen since he was 2? So everyone else didn't grow up seeing their great aunts and uncles all of the time?
I didn't.
No.
Okay, I'm weird.
No, you just have a big family.
Yeah. What was he supposed to do here all by himself until his mother got back? Because I guess he spends every waking second hanging out with his mom as a 12-year-old.
He's clearly in love with. It's super creepy already.
Very
She's
Oedipal.
so pretty.
Evan, we've discussed this 1,000 times, his mother said impatiently, pounding on his aunt's front door again.
Alright, where are we at? This is a family emergency. I really expect you to cooperate a little better. Her next words were drowned out by Trigger, Evan's Cocker Spaniel, who stuck his tan head who stuck his tan head out of the back window of the rented car and began barking and howling. Is it important that they say rented? I don't understand.
I wonder if he's got cartons he has to unpack.
So the dog's barking, and then Mrs. Ross exclaims, "Now he's giving me a hard time too." "Can I let him out?" Evan asked eagerly. "I guess you'd better," his mother replied. "Trigger's so old, we don't want him to have a heart attack in there.
Oh,
I just hope he doesn't terrify Catherine." "I'm coming, Trigger," Evan called. He jogged to the gravel driveway and pulled open the car door. With an excited yip, Trigger leapt out and began running in wide circles around Catherine's small rectangular front yard, as opposed to like oval yards. He doesn't look like he's 12, Evan said, watching the dog run and smiling for the first time that day because his mom abuses him sexually.
Oh.
See, you'll have Trigger for company, Mrs. Ross said, turning back to the front door.
Okay, I just decided I'm picturing her as Marion Ross.
I'll be back from Atlanta in no time.
Marion Ross.
A couple of weeks at the most. I'm sure your dad and I can find a house in that time, and then we'll be back before you even notice we're gone. Unless they're, like, dead the whole time.
Yeah.
Yeah, sure, Evan said sarcastically. I actually said that sarcastically.
Yeah.
The sun dipped behind a large cloud. A shadow fell over the small front yard with the oval shape, whatever. Trigger wore himself out quickly and came panting up the walk, his tongue hanging nearly to the ground.
Ew.
Evan bent down and petted the dog's back. He looked up at the gray house as his mother knocked on the front door again. It looked dark and uninviting. Probably tacky outside. There were curtains drawn over the upstairs windows. One of the shutters had come loose and was resting at an odd angle. "Mom, why are you knocking?" he asked, shoving his hands into his jean pockets. "You said Aunt Catherine was totally deaf." Oh, his mother's face reddened. "You got me so upset, Evan, with all your complaining. I completely forgot. Of course she
You
can't hear us."
forgot your own aunt was deaf?
Well, to be fair, it's her husband's aunt. So maybe she isn't that intimate with her.
And Evan's thinking, how am I going to spend 2 weeks with a strange old lady who can't even hear me? Evan wondered glumly.
You can get away with
Easily.
everything.
Hiding.
He remembered
Children
eavesdropping
just
on
want to
his
be heard.
parents 2 weeks earlier when they had made the plan. They were seated across from each other at the kitchen table. They thought Evan was out in the backyard, but he was in the hallway, his back pressed against the wall, listening. His father, he learned, was reluctant to leave. "She's a very stubborn old woman," Miss Ross had said. "Look at her, deaf for 20 years, and she refused to learn sign language or to lip read.
Oh my god.
God.
How's she
Wow.
going to take care of Evan?"
She's been living in just bitter
How
insanity.
selfish of her to not learn sign language. Do you know sign language, Mrs. Marion Ross?
How much fucks does she not give?
Oh, imagine her talking.
She definitely will be talking,
Yeah.
so we'll get to hear.
Okay. "She took good care of you when you were a boy," Mrs. Ross had argued. "That was 30 years ago." Oh, wait, Mr. Ross.
The dad.
That's the dad. Hang on. "That was 30 years ago," Mr. Ross protested.
It's our go-to dad voice.
"Well, we have no choice," Evan heard his mother saying. God damn it. Every time, I
Read
think.
ahead a little.
Well, we have no choice," Evan heard his mother say. "There's no one else to leave him with.
And he's too old to abort."
Everyone else is away on vacation. You know, August is just the worst month for you to be transferred to Atlanta, you son of a bitch." "Well, excuse me," Mr. Ross said sarcastically. Okay. Discussion closed. You're absolutely right, dear. We have no choice. Catherine it is. You'll drive Evan there and then fly to Atlanta. "It'll be a good experience for him," Evan heard his mother say. "He needs to learn how to get along under difficult circumstances. You know, moving to Atlanta, leaving all his friends behind. That isn't going to be easy on Evan either."
Let's go get him attached to people that live near
Yeah,
her.
let's get him
Yeah.
started by not taking him to Atlanta.
And then move again.
"Okay, I said okay," Mr. Ross said impatiently. "It's settled. Evan will be fine. Catherine is a bit weird, but she's perfectly harmless." Evan heard the kitchen chairs scraping across the linoleum, indicating that his parents were getting up and that their discussion was ended. His fate was sealed. Silently, he had made his way out the front door and around to the backyard to think about what he had just overheard.
He leaned against the trunk of a big maple tree which hid him from the house. It was his favorite place to think. Why didn't his parents ever include him in their discussions, he wondered. If they were going to discuss leaving him with some old aunt he'd never seen before, shouldn't he at least have a say? He learned all the big family news by eavesdropping from the hallway. It just wasn't right. Evan pulled a small twig off the ground and tapped it against the broad tree trunk. That wasn't obnoxious at all. Aunt Catherine was weird. That's what his dad had said. She was so weird his father didn't want to leave Evan with her. But they had no choice. No choice. Maybe they'll change their minds and take me to Atlanta with them, Evan thought. Maybe they'll realize they can't do this to me. But now, 2 weeks later, he was standing in front of Aunt Catherine's gray house, feeling very nervous, staring at his brown suitcase filled with his belongings, which stood beside his mother on the stoop.
Jesus Christ.
There's nothing to be scared of, he assured himself. It was only for 2 weeks, maybe less, but then the words popped out before he'd even had a chance to think about them. Mom, what if Aunt Catherine is mean? Huh? The question caught his mother by surprise. Mean? Why would she be mean, Evan?
She's deaf and
As
doesn't know sign language.
As she said this, facing Evan with her back to the house, the front door was pulled open and Aunt Catherine, a large woman with startling black hair, filled the doorway. Staring past his mother, Evan saw the knife in Catherine's hand, and he saw that the blade of the knife was dripping with blood!
Oh!
Chapter 2.
Pig's blood.
Page 8.
There's no chapter title?
Nope.
Alright.
This might be before he grew into chapter titles.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Trigger raised his head and began to bark, hopping backward on his hind legs with each bark. Yep. Cocker spaniels can't bark; they just yell.
Yeah.
Startled, Evan's mother spun around, nearly stumbling off the small stoop. Evan gaped in silent horror at the knife. A smile formed on Catherine's face, and she pushed open the screen door with her free hand. She wasn't anything like Evan had pictured. He had pictured a small, frail-looking, white-haired old lady, but Catherine was a large woman, very robust, broad-shouldered, and tall, and full-chested.
Childbearing hips.
She wore a peach-colored house dress and had straight black hair, pulled back and tied behind her head in a long ponytail that flowed down the back of the dress. She wore no
12-year-old boys definitely noticed that,
Yeah.
right?
Oh, definitely.
She wore no makeup, and her pale face seemed to disappear under the striking black hair, except for her
noticed that.
eyes, which were large and round and steely blue. I was slicing beef, she said in a surprisingly deep voice, waving the blood-stained kitchen knife.
She stared at Evan. You like beef? I'm just gonna.
Yeah.
I'm just gonna keep
no,
on
we have
going.
to. She's
Not
deaf.
doing that voice.
Yeah, he managed to reply, his chest still fluttered from the shock of seeing her appear with the raised knife. Catherine held open the screen door, but neither Evan nor his mother made any moves to go inside.
Is that a lot of talking?
It's big, Catherine said to Miss Ross. A big boy, not like his father. I used to call his father Chicken, because he was no bigger than a chicken. She laughed as if she had cracked a funny joke. And that is...
Good one, Aunt Catherine.
Miss Ross, picking up Evan's suitcase, glanced uncomfortably back at him. Yeah, he's big, she said. Actually, Evan was one of the shortest kids in his class. And no matter how much he ate, he remained, quote, as skinny as a spaghetti noodle, as his dad liked to say.
That's dangerous.
Yeah,
Sounds like verbal
he's got a
abuse,
not
disease of
malnourished.
some
It's
kind.
like Evan needs to eat more beef. You don't have to answer me, Catherine said, stepping aside so that Miss Ross could get inside the house with the suitcase. I can't hear you. Her voice was deep,
Sounds like an MC, like, I can't hear you.
as deep as a man's. And she spoke clearly, without the indistinct pronunciation that some deaf people have.
See, guys? See?
He was anticipating us.
Doesn't matter.
Doesn't matter. We're still
Doesn't
doing
matter.
it.
Still doing it.
Still doing it.
Evan followed his mother into the front hallway, Trigger yapping at his heels. Can't you get that dog quiet? His mother snapped. It doesn't matter. She can't hear it.
Damn.
Evan's a dick.
Yeah.
Gesturing toward his aunt, who was heading to the kitchen to put the knife down.
There is yet to be a single likable character in any of his books.
Yeah. Catherine returned a few seconds later, her blue eyes locked on Evan, her lips pursed as if she were studying him. Don't you like beef? She repeated. He nodded. Good. Her expression still serious. I only fixed beef for your father, but he only wanted pie. What kind of pie? Evan asked, and then blushed when he remembered Catherine couldn't hear it.
It's just one long joke, this whole book.
God.
Running gag.
It's a good thing you don't have to hear blood.
So he's a good boy? Not a troublemaker?
Why is she asking questions?
Catherine asked Evan's mother. Mrs. Ross nodded, looking at Evan. Where shall we put his suitcase? She asked. I can tell by looking he's a good boy, Catherine said. She reached out and grabbed Evan's face.
We might finally get emails.
Her big hand holding him under the chin.
I mean, not from deaf
Jesus.
people, but...
Her big
Thank
hand
God.
holding him under the chin, so around his throat. Her eyes examining him closely. Good-looking boy, she said, giving his chin a hard squeeze. He like the girls? Still holding his chin, she lowered her face to his. "You got a girlfriend?" she asked, her pale face right above his, so close he could smell her breath, which was sour. Evan took a step back, an embarrassed grin crossing his face. "No, not really." "Yes?" Catherine cried, bellowing in his ear. "Yes?"
Oh my god!
"I knew it!" She laughed heartily, turning her gaze to Evan's mother.
Deaf people
I
actually
can't
make up
go
90%
on.
of our listeners.
Well, yeah, they can't. They don't know we're making fun of them.
They can't hear us.
We're not making fun
We're not-
of them. R.L. Stine is
Yeah, we're not
making fun of
making
them.
fun of anyone.
We're reading it as written.
Yeah. We're being realistic, guys.
The suitcase, Mrs. Ross asked, picking up the bag. That's not a question, and she's not asking it to anyone. "He likes the girls, huh?" Catherine repeated, still chuckling. "I could tell, just like his father. His father always liked the girls. He fucked a lot of women before he met you, Marion Ross."
Boy, was he a slut. A slut chicken.
Slutty chicken. Evan turned desperately to his mother. "Mom, I can't stay here," he said, whispering even though he knew Catherine couldn't hear. "Please, don't make me." "Hush," his mother replied, also whispering. "She'll leave you alone, I promise. She's just trying to be friendly." "He likes the girls," Catherine repeated, leering at him with her cold blue eyes, again lowering her face close to Evan's. "Mom, her breath smells like triggers," Evan exclaimed miserably. "Evan," Mrs. Ross shouted angrily, "stop it. I expect you to cooperate." "I'm gonna bake you a pie," Catherine said, tugging at her black ponytail with one of her huge hands. "Would you like to roll out the dough? I bet you would. What did your father tell you about me, Evan?" She winked at Mrs. Ross. "Did he tell you I was a scary old witch?" "No," Evan protested, looking at his mother. "Well, I am," Catherine declared. She's my new favorite character. And once again burst into her deep-throated laugh. Ha ha ha! Trigger took this moment to begin barking ferociously and jumping on Evan's great aunt. She glared down at the dog, her eyes narrowing, her expression becoming stern.
So, like, they're pointing out the big hands and the deep voice.
So
Like,
clearly a man monster.
is it
Monster
secretly
man.
like his grandfather and not his
Yeah.
great aunt? Like his dad's just
Great
ashamed?
uncle?
Okay, where's it at? Glare
The
down the
first
dog.
page.
Okay. Her eyes daring, her expression becoming stern. "Look out, or we'll put you in the pie, doggy!" she exclaimed. Trigger barked even harder, darting boldly toward the tall, hovering woman, then quickly retreating, his stub of a tail whipping back and forth in a frenzy. "We'll put him in the pie, won't we, Evan?" Catherine repeated, putting a big hand on Evan's shoulder and squeezing it till Evan flinched in pain. "Mom!" he pleaded when his aunt finally let go and, smiling, made her way to the kitchen. "Mom, please!" "It's just her sense of humor, Evan," Mrs. Ross said uncertainly. "She means well, really. She's going to bake you a pie." "But I don't want pie," Evan wailed. "I don't like it here, Mom. She hurt me. She squeezed my shoulder so hard." "Evan, I'm sure she didn't mean to. She's just trying to joke with you. She wants you to like her. Give her a chance, okay?" Evan started to protest, but thought better of it. "I'm counting on you," his mother continued, turning her eyes to the kitchen. They could both see Catherine at the counter, her broad back to them, hacking away at something with the big kitchen knife. Yeah, no, I think they're really trying to get, like, the transgender thing in there. This is before its time.
But she's weird, Evan protested. "Listen, Evan."
She's not weird. She's just deaf.
She's just a deaf man dressed like a lady. What's so weird about that?
"Listen, Evan, I understand how you're feeling," his mother said, "but you won't have to
Don't
spend
care.
all of your time with her. There are a lot of kids in this neighborhood. Take Trigger for a walk. I'll bet you'll make some friends your age."
Just don't get attached to them because you're leaving in 2 weeks.
"She's an old woman, Evan. She won't want you hanging around all the time." "I guess," Evan muttered. His mother bent down suddenly and gave him a hug, pressing her cheek against his. That's not creepy at all.
It was
touching
weird
his
because she
face.
never did it before.
The hug, he knew, was supposed to cheer him up, but the pressing his cheek against hers really creeped him out.
What?
Does it say that?
No, it doesn't.
Oh.
say-
You fooled us.
It only made him feel worse. "I'm counting on you," his mother repeated in his ear. Evan decided to try and be braver about this. "I'll help you carry the suitcase up to my room," he said. They carried it up the narrow staircase. His room was actually a study. The walls were lined with bookshelves filled with old hardcover books. The large mahogany desk stood in the center of the room. A narrow cot had been made up under the single curtained window. The window faced out onto the backyard.
Describe it more, Evan.
It's not in first
What were the
person.
sconces like?
Lots of detail describing this room.
There's a lot of detail in his books describing shit that no one cares
Yeah.
about.
Yeah, the
that
least
have
important
no relevance
stuff.
whatsoever.
There are usually entire pages that were like, the wallpaper went from the floor to the ceiling. Chairs were lined against the wallpaper. Balloons tied to the chairs. Oh, neat.
The window faced out onto the backyard, a long green rectangle, with the gray shingled garage to the left, a tall picket fence to the right. A small fenced-in area stretched across the back of the yard. It looked like some sort of dog run.
Dog
Dog
A
run?
dog run.
What? Where are we?
Left.
I need to see
Top
what
of the
dog
page.
run is
Oh.
spelled like.
Dog run. Like some sort
Dog
of dog
run.
run. It looked like a dog run.
All
Yeah, you
right.
know.
Sure.
A dog run. The room smelled musty. The sharp aroma of mothballs invaded Evan's nose. Trigger sneezed. He rolled onto his back. His legs raced in the air. He was having a stroke. Trigger can't stand this place either, Evan thought. But he kept his thoughts to himself, smiling bravely at his mother, who quickly unpacked his suitcase, nervously checking her watch. I'm late.
12. Make him do it himself.
Don't want to miss my plane, she said. She gave him another hug, longer this time, and creepier. Then she took a $10 bill from out of her boobs and stuffed it into his shirt pocket. Buy yourself a treat. Be good. I'll hurry back as fast as I can. Okay, bye, he said, his chest feeling fluttery, his throat as dry as cotton. The smell of her perfume momentarily drowned out the mothballs. He didn't want her to leave. He had such a bad feeling, and he was clearly really attached to his mother in a weird way. You're just scared, he scolded himself. I'll call you from Atlanta, she shouted as she disappeared down the stairs and said goodbye to Catherine. Her perfume disappeared. The mothballs returned. Trigger uttered a low, sad howl, as if he knew what was happening, as if he knew they were being abandoned here in this strange house with this strange, old, deaf man-woman.
Evan picked Trigger up and nose-kissed his cold black nose with his nose on the dog's
Oh
nose.
my god.
Nose.
Nose.
Putting the dog back
Nose.
down on the worn carpet, he made his way to the window, which, as we heard before,
Looked out at a dog
was
run
curtained
Ah.
and facing the backyard.
where there was a dog
I
run.
knew there was plenty of description. He stood there for a long while, one hand holding the curtains aside, staring down at the small green yard. Oh, silly me. He's going to describe it again. I should have known. Trying to calm the fluttering in his
Is there a
chest.
dog run?
This is my
There
steering
sure
window.
is. After a few minutes, he heard his mother's car back down the gravel drive. Then he heard it roll away. When he could no longer hear it, he sighed and plopped down on the cot. It's just you and me now, Trigger, he
doesn't
said
have a
glumly.
bed.
I know, it's so sad. It's like in the army.
Trigger was busily sniffing behind the door. Evan stared up at the walls of old books. What am I going to do here all day? He asked himself, propping his head in his hands. No Nintendo, no computer.
Oh, shit.
He hadn't even seen a TV in his great aunt's small living room. What am I going to do? I clearly can't read.
And I
If
doubt she
only
has a
I wasn't
radio.
illiterate.
Yeah, I doubt she has
Sigh.
a radio.
Sighing again, he picked himself up. Why? Oh, I get it! There she is!
It took me a minute too.
Oh, sighing again, he picked himself up and walked
Great,
along the
great.
bookshelves, his eyes scanning the titles. There were lots of science books and textbooks, he saw. Books on biology and astronomy, ancient Egypt, chemistry texts, and medical books. Several shelves were filled with dusty, yellowed books. Maybe Catherine's husband, Evan's great-uncle, had been some sort of scientist. Nothing here for me to read, he thought glumly. He pulled open the closet door. I'll just finish it.
Sure.
Oh! He cried out as something leapt out at him. Help! Please help! Everything went black. Help! I can't see! Evan screamed.
Oh no.
Are we doing
do
another
one
one?
more?
One more.
All right. Chapter 3, page 17 of Monster Blood by
Oh my God.
R.L. Stine. Ahem.
Him.
Evan staggered back in fear as the warm blackness crept over him.
What?
It took him a few seconds to realize what it was. His heart still thudding in his chest, he reached up and pulled the screeching black cat off his face.
What?
Why is a cat inside a
How is
closed
this-
closet?
I just so a black cat just went. "Ah!"
Just like face huggered him.
Yeah.
The cat dropped silently to the ground and padded to the doorway. Evan turned and saw Catherine standing there, an amused grin on her face.
She's the best.
I was waiting for you to do that.
Yeah.
How long had she been standing there, he wondered. Sarah Beth, how did you get in there? She asked in a playfully scolding tone, bending down to speak to the cat. You must have given the boy a fright. The cat mewed and rubbed against Catherine's bare leg, but she didn't appreciate the mew. Did Sarah Beth scare you? Catherine asked, Evan still smiling.
Beth?
Yeah. That cat has a strange sense of humor. She's evil. Pure evil. She chuckled as if she said something
Well, you
funny.
can't say she hasn't warned him.
Yeah.
I'm okay, Evan said uncertainly. This is a really short one.
Yeah, that's okay.
Watch out for Sarah Beth. She is evil. I'm sorry. I didn't
Yeah,
realize
that's
that's what happened. Let me.
Slip into it.
It's a lot of work.
Her
to sound like
deafness
that.
slides in
Yeah.
and out. Catherine repeated, bending down and picking up the cat by the scruff of her neck, holding her up in the air in front of her. Evil, evil, evil.
Oh my god, I love this lady so much.
Seeing the cat suspended in the air, Trigger uttered an unhappy howl. His stubby tail went into motion, and he leapt up at the cat, barking and yipping, missed, and leapt again, snapping at Sarah Beth's tail, barking and yipping, missed, and leapt again, snapping at Sarah Beth's tail. Down, Trigger, get down! Evan cried. Struggling to get out of Catherine's arms, the cat swiped a clawed back paw at her, screeching in anger and fear. Trigger barked and howled as Evan struggled to pull the excited cocker spaniel away. Evan grabbed hold of Trigger as the cat swung to the floor and disappeared out of the door. Bad dog, Evan whispered, but he didn't really mean it. He was glad Trigger had scared the cat away.
Jeez.
Well, that cat did face hugger him.
Well, that's true.
He looked up to see Catherine still filling the doorway, staring down at him sternly. Bring the dog, she said in a low voice. Her eyes narrowed, her pale lips pursed tightly. Huh? Evan gripped Trigger in a tight hug. Bring the dog, Catherine repeated coldly. We can't have animals fighting in this house. But Aunt Catherine, Evan started to plead, then remembered she couldn't hear him.
Is that going to be the whole
How
fucking
many
book?
times?
Yeah.
We need to keep a tally.
Just finish it, James.
No,
Sarah Beth is a bad one,
It's
Catherine said, not softening her expression. We can't get her riled, can we? She turned and stared down the stairs. Bring the dog, Evan. Holding Trigger tightly by the shoulders with both hands, Evan hesitated. I have to take care of the dog, Catherine said sternly. Come. Evan was suddenly filled with dread. What did she mean, take care of the dog?
Bake him into a pie.
A picture flashed into his mind of Catherine standing at the doorway with the bloody kitchen knife in her hand. Bring the dog!
Jesus Christ.
Catherine insisted. Evan gasped. What was she going to do to Trigger?
Chapter 4.
Which is like a joke name for a dog.
Yeah. Okay, ready? Chapter 4.
I don't think I'm your donkey.
Catherine repeated, frowning at Trigger. The dog whimpered in reply.
Come, Evan, follow me.
She said,
Wow, this is more offensive than last time.
well, I am drunker. She said impatiently. Seeing that he had no choice, Evan obediently carried Trigger down the stairs and followed his deaf aunt into the backyard. I'm prepared, she said, turning to make sure he was following. Despite her age and her manliness, she was at least 80. Holy shit, I didn't know she was that old.
80?
She was walking with long, steady strides. I knew you were bringing a dog, though I made sure I was prepared. Trigger licked Evan's hand. Feel a little bad about doing that.
Yeah.
Trigger licked Evan's hand as they walked across the yard to the long, fenced-in area at the back. It's a special place for your dog, Catherine said, reaching up to grab one end of the rope that stretched across the run. No, it's a dog run.
Becca's hoping this character dies in the beginning.
I really hope
So we don't do the voice anymore.
I'm actively wincing.
That's this collar, Evan. Your dog will have fun here.
He's amping it up way too much.
She frowned disapprovingly at Trigger. And there will be no problem with Sarabeth. Sarabeth's the cat. Here you go. Don't divorce me.
Evan felt very relieved that this was all Catherine wanted to do to Trigger. But he didn't want to leave Trigger tied up in this prison in the back of the yard. Trigger was a house dog. He wouldn't be happy by himself out here.
Every dog's happy
Whoa.
outside. They're dogs.
Yeah.
They're
House
like
dog.
dirt.
Yeah. I'd rather stay indoors. But Evan knew he had no way of arguing with his aunt. Catherine is smart in a way.
Literally,
he
she's
thought,
deaf.
bitterly as he hooked Trigger's collar to the rope. Since she won't learn sign language and won't lip read, it means she gets to do whatever she wants and no one can tell her no.
Pretty much.
Wow.
I really don't
great.
understand how she functions at all in society.
For when I eventually did go deaf,
She
that's
lives
my plan.
alone. He bent down and gave Trigger's warm head a pat and looked up at the old woman. She had her arms crossed in front of her chest, her blue eyes glowing brightly in the sunlight, a cold smile of triumph on her face. "That's a good boy," she said, waiting for Evan to get up before starting back to the house. "I knew when I looked at you
Ew.
that the dog, that you were a good boy? Okay, whatever. Come to the house, Evan. I have cookies and milk. You'll enjoy them." Her words were kind, but her voice was hard and cold.
Probably because she was deaf.
Trigger sent up an unhappy howl as Evan followed Catherine to the house. Evan turned, intending to go back and comfort the dog, but Catherine grabbed his hand in an iron grip and, staring straight ahead, led him to the kitchen door. The kitchen was small and cluttered and very warm.
Catherine motioned for him to sit at a small table against the wall. The table was covered with a plastic checkerboard tablecloth. Psh, it's so tacky. She frowned, her eyes studying him as she brought over his snack. He downed the oatmeal raisin cookies and milk, listening to Trigger howl in the backyard. Oatmeal raisin wasn't his favorite, but he was surprised to find that he was hungry, as he gobbled them down. Catherine stood at the doorway, staring intently at him, a stern expression on her face. I'm going to take Trigger for a walk," he announced, wiping the milk mustache off his upper lip with the paper napkin she had given him.
What a slob.
Catherine shrugged and wrinkled up her face. "Oh, right, she can't hear me," Evan thought.
Is that going to happen every chapter?
We said,
Every
we
page.
said that before. We need to keep a tally of how many times he keeps
Like,
trying to fucking talk to her
It's
and forgetting
I
that
swear
she's
to God,
completely deaf.
like 5 times already. Like him and his mom are like, blah, 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 blah. All right. She's deaf
I
and
bet
she
she-
won't learn sign
I
language
bet
Keep
and she
forgetting
doesn't
she's been
read
deaf
lips.
her whole life.
I bet
Whoops.
she can lip read and she's just faking it.
Yeah.
Standing at the kitchen window, he pointed the trigger, then made a walking motion with 2 fingers, like a dick. Catherine nodded.
Ew.
Woo, he thought, this is going to be hard. He waved goodbye and hurried to free Trigger from his backyard prison. A few minutes later, Trigger was tugging at the leash, sniffing the flowers along the curb as Evan made his way up the block. The other houses on the street were about the same size as Catherine's, he saw, and they all had small, neatly trimmed square front yards, because this is important to the plot. He saw some little kids chasing each other around a birch tree.
You got a Bekah page.
And he saw a middle-aged man in bright orange bathing trunks washing his car
What?
Ew.
Ew.
with a garden hose in his
Awful
driveway.
sounding.
I have bright orange bathing trunks.
He was singing Dream Police while he was doing it.
But he didn't see any kids his age. Trigger barked at a squirrel and tugged the leash out of Evan's hand. "Hey, come back!" Evan called.
That's awesome.
Trigger, disobedient as always, like my dumb deaf aunt, took off after the squirrel. The squirrel wisely climbed a tree, but Trigger, his eyesight not what it once was,
What a
continued the
wise squirrel.
chase. Running at full speed, calling the dog's name, Evan followed him around a corner and halfway down the block before Trigger finally realized he had lost the race. Oh my God. Breathing hard, Evan grabbed the leash handle. "Gotcha!" he said. He gave the leash a tug, trying to lead the panting dog back to Catherine's street. Trigger, sniffing around a dark tree trunk, pulled the other way. Evan was about to pick up the stubborn dog when he was startled by a hand grabbing his shoulder. "Hey, who are you?" a voice demanded.
Uh-oh. Fun.
Feel free to change that. I don't know.
We'll see who it is.
Not
Yeah.
submitted to that voice.
No.
Chapter
We need
5.
to know what disability they have.
Oh
before
wait,
we-
no, this is
Before
great.
we pick what voice they
Oh
have.
no.
I'm gonna keep this voice. Chapter 5. Evan spun around to find a girl standing behind him. staring at him with dark brown eyes. "Why'd you grab my shoulder like that?" he asked, his heart still pounding.
To scare you.
She said simply. "Yeah, well," Evan shrugged. Trigger gave a hard tug at his dick and nearly pulled him over. The girl laughed. She was pretty, he thought. She had short, wavy brown hair, almost black. That's important. And flashing brown eyes, and a playful, teasing smile.
She's a robot?
This is disgusting. They are 12.
Oh, come on.
She was wearing an oversized yellow t-shirt over black spandex leggings and bright
hot.
yellow Nikes.
Nikes.
So who are you?
She demanded again. She wasn't the shy type, he decided. "I'm me," he said, letting Trigger lead him around the tree.
Did you move into the Winterhalter house?
She asked him, following him. He shook his head. "No, I'm just visiting." She frowned in disappointment.
For a couple of weeks, Evan added, I'm staying with my aunt. Actually, she's my great aunt. What's so great about her? The girl cracked.
Do a deep voice.
Nothing, Evan replied without laughing. For sure. I'm not doing a deep voice. Trigger sniffed at a bug on a fat brown leaf.
Fat brown leaf!
I
It
don't
started
have
this
to
early.
improvise.
It started this early.
Yeah, but wasn't everything fat
Remember
in the last...
party games?
Yeah.
They're in the woods with like the fat trees
The
with their
fat logs,
fat
the fat
fucking trunks, their fat fucking branches.
Well, this is a fat fucking leaf. Is that your bike? Evan asked, pointing to the red BMX bike lying on the grass behind her.
Nice.
Yeah, she replied.
Is it a Huffy?
It's cool, he said. I have one like it. I like your dog, she said, eyeing Trigger. He looks real stupid. I like stupid dogs. Not improvising.
Wow.
I don't have to be creative with this one.
Evan, she's into you.
Me too, I guess. Evan laughed. Ha ha ha. What's his name? Does he have a stupid name?
Yes, in fact, he does.
What did you know?
She bent down and tried to pet Trigger's back, but he moved away because he felt very insulted by this line of questioning.
I like that Jonathan did his drunk old man laugh.
I don't even remember that happening.
Just now.
Like
All right.
7 seconds ago.
Guys, you're my best friends.
Jonathan's drunk.
His name's Trigger, Evan said, and waited for her reaction. Yeah, that's pretty stupid, she said thoughtfully. Thoughtfully? Yeah.
She had to think about it.
That's pretty stupid.
You know
He's
what?
not a gun.
Hang on.
He doesn't even have a holster on.
Wait, that's a
What a dumb dog.
a dumb name.
He's not even wearing like a cowboy hat or
Pretty
anything.
stupid.
Especially for a Cocker Spaniel.
Now we know
Everyone
what kind of dog-
knows you name Cocker Spaniels after foods. I'm
You know,
sorry.
maybe a beagle named Trigger would make sense,
We're
but definitely not a cocker
Oh my
spaniel.
god!
We're interrupting her.
Sorry.
Thanks, Evan said uncertainly. Trigger turned to sniff the girl's hands, his tail wagging furiously, his tongue hanging down to the ground. I have a stupid name too, the girl admitted. She waited for Evan to ask. What is it? He said finally.
Holster.
Trigger. Just kidding. Andrea, she said. That's not a stupid name. I hate it, she said, pulling a blade of grass off
Out of her
her
vagina.
leggings.
Andrea. That's how it's written. Oh.
It is.
She stretched the name out in a deep, cultured voice.
Wait, no, you have to say it like
Cultured.
you have to say
What
it.
culture?
Oh.
You have to say
Andrea.
Remember, it's deep, a deep, cultured voice.
Andrea. She stretched the name out in a deep, cultured voice. It sounds so stuck up, like I should be announcing SNL.
Deep.
I did it. I did Andrea.
No, you did the rest of her.
Oh.
It sounds so stuck up, like I should be wearing a corduroy jumper with a prim white blouse.
Oh, God.
Walking a toy poodle.
That sounds very fancy.
Yeah.
Corduroy.
You put thought into this.
So I make everyone call me Andy.
That's what it says.
Lesbian.
Hi, Andy. Evan said, petting Trigger. My name is...
Don't tell me.
She interrupted, clamping a hot hand over his mouth.
Ew.
Oh, it's
God, hand.
so gross. She certainly isn't shy, he thought. Let me get...
This is R.L. Stine's sexiest book yet.
It really is.
Let me guess,
she said.
is it a stupid name too?
Oh my God.
I love this girl.
I didn't think I could love anyone more than Catherine.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
she's giving Catherine a run for her deaf money.
I hope
Yeah,
that
he
means
nodded.
money.
It's Evan. Evan's stupid. She laughed.
That's really a stupid name.
He felt glad that he made her laugh. She was cheering him up, he realized. A lot of the girls back home didn't appreciate his sense of humor. They thought he was silly.
Wait, how old are they?
I don't know, and I don't care.
God.
What are you doing?
She asked. Walking, Trigger, you know, exploring the neighborhood.
It's pretty boring, she said. Just a lot of houses. Want to go into town? It's only a few blocks away.
She pointed down the street. Evan hesitated. He hadn't told his aunt he was going into town. But what the heck, he thought. She wouldn't care. Besides,
Or here.
what could possibly happen?
Oh.
Definitely nothing bad.
Chapter 6. Do we not say chapters?
I do it all the
It
time.
was just good. It was a good reading.
Oh. Okay. Evan said, let's check out the town. Oh, I guess that's... I have to go to a toy store and look for a present for my cousin, Andy said. I guess that's Andrea?
Yeah.
Okay.
She
All
goes
right.
by Andy because she's
Oh, yeah.
into girls.
I'm sorry, I
That
missed
was
that.
on the last page.
Yeah,
Did you
I'm
say
bad.
because she's into girls?
Yeah.
Hoisting her bike up by the handlebars. How old are you? Evan asked, turning Trigger toward the street. 12. Me too! He said. Can I try your bike? She shook her head as she
I never
climbed onto the narrow
Rode a
seat.
boy's bike before.
No, but I'll let you run alongside.
That's right, Andy. Keep him in his place.
Science at 11.
She laughed. You're a riot! He said sarcastically, hurrying to keep up as she began to pedal. And you're stupid, she called back playfully.
God.
Oh, this is
Hey!
great.
Andrea! Wait up!
He called, stretching the name out to annoy her. Bitch. A few blocks later,
Isn't flirting fun?
the house has ended
Still
up.
works that way.
He threw a rock at her because he liked her.
Side note, every time Andrea gets stretched out, I got like sucked back into my childhood. Did anyone see Mask of the Phantasm?
Yes.
Like when Batman's like, Andrea!
Don't remember, but
All right,
Andrea!
never mind. I had to.
I believe you.
Yeah.
Evan saw a small brick post office, a barber shop with an old-fashioned barber pole out front, a grocery, a drive-through bank,
Long
and a
sentence.
hardware store with a large sign in the window proclaiming a sale on birdseed.
What a town!
How quaint.
What a town!
I love how it's not a grocery store, it's just a grocery.
Grocery.
The toy store is in the next block.
He doesn't
Andy
say boxes
said.
either. He calls them cartons.
Yeah. Walking her bike along the sidewalk, Evan tugged Trigger's leash, encouraging him to keep up the pace.
Actually, there are two toy stores, an old one and a new one. I like the old one best.
Southern
I'm a
now?
hipster.
Let's check it out! Evan said, examining the cluttered window display of the video store on the corner. I wonder if Aunt Catherine has a VCR, he thought. He quickly dismissed the idea. No way. It's the 90s. The toy store was in an old clapboard building, whatever that is, that hadn't been painted in many years. A small hand-painted sign on the dust-smeared window proclaimed,
building's
Wagner's Novelties and Sundries. There were no
Sundries.
There were no toys on display. Andy leaned her bike against the front of the building.
Sometimes the owner can be a little mean. I don't know if he'll let you bring a dog in.
Well, let's give it a try, Evan said, pulling open the door. Tugging hard on his leash, Trigger led the way into the store. Evan found himself in a dark, low-ceilinged, narrow room. It took a while for his eyes to adjust to the dim light. Wagner's looked more like a warehouse than a store.
So like a Walmart.
Yeah.
There were floor-to-ceiling shelves against both walls, jammed with boxes of toys, and a long display counter that ran through the center of the store, leaving narrow aisles that even someone as skinny as Evan had to squeeze through.
Damn.
At the front of the store, slumped on a tall stool behind an old-fashioned wooden cash register, sat a grumpy-looking man with a single tuft of white hair in the center of a red bald head.
Old Man Rosenberger.
That sounds terrifying. He had a drooping white mustache that seemed to frown at Evan and Andy as they entered. "Hi," Andy said timidly, giving the man a wave. See him trying.
Yeah, good.
He grunted in reply and turned back to the newspaper he was reading. Trigger sniffed the low shelves excitedly. Evan looked around at the stacks of toys. It appeared from... wait, my eyes just got confused. It appeared from the thick layer of dust that they'd been sitting there for 100 years. Everything seemed tossed together. Dolls next to building sets. Art supplies mixed in with old action figures Evan didn't recognize. A toy drum set underneath a pile of footballs. How unorganized! Any 12-year-old boy would not be able to make sense of this. He and Andy were the only customers in the store. "Do they have Nintendo games?" Evan asked her, whispering, afraid to break the still silence. "I don't think so," Andy whispered back. "I'll ask." She shouted up to the front, "Do you have Nintendo games?" It took a while for the man to answer. He scratched his ear.
Old man.
Don't carry them! He grunted, finally, sounding annoyed by the interruption.
I grunted.
Andy and Evan wandered toward the back of the store. "Why do you like this place?" Evan whispered, picking up an old cap pistol with a cowboy holster. Trigger.
pistol?
Cat pistol?
Cap.
Oh.
Cap.
So like a pistol that you shoot at cats.
I know.
I think
Fucked
it's
up.
just neat.
Andy is Sam Elliott now.
You can find some real treasures here. It's not like other toy stores. Beef. It's what's for dinner.
I'm just thinking of it from Roadhouse.
Yeah.
I don't wear underwear.
That's for sure, Evan said sarcastically. "Hey, look!" He picked up a lunchbox with a cowboy dressed in black emblazoned on its side. "Hop-along Cassidy," he read. "Who's Hop-along Cassidy?"
A cowboy with a stupid name.
Andy said, taking the old lunchbox from him and examining it.
I love Andy.
Look, it's made of metal, not plastic. Wonder if my cousin would like it. He likes stupid names too.
She is a fucking bitch.
judgmental.
She is a bitchy little girl.
It's a pretty weird present, Evan said.
He's a pretty weird cousin.
Hey,
Andy
He's
cracked.
stupid, and he likes stupid things.
Hey, look at this.
She set down the old lunchbox and picked up an enormous box.
It's a magic set. Astound your friends. Perform 100 amazing tricks.
She read. That's a lot of amazing tricks, Evan said. This is just Shakespearean.
Oh, God.
He wandered farther back into the dimly lit store, Trigger leading the way, sniffing furiously. Hey! To Evan's surprise, a narrow doorway led into a small back room. Take us home, Jeff.
This room, Evan saw, was even darker and dustier. Stepping inside, he saw worn-looking stuffed animals tossed into cartons.
Yes!
Games in faded.
Every book.
Drink every time you hear cartons.
I finished.
Games in faded, yellowed boxes. Baseball gloves with the leather worn thin and cracked. Who would want this junk? He thought. He thinks like an adult. He just speaks like He was about to leave when something caught his eye. It was a blue can, about the size of a can of soup. He picked it up, surprised by how heavy it was. Bringing it close to his face to examine it in the dim light, he read the faded label. Monster blood.
Oh, he said it.
Below that, in smaller type, it read, Surprising miracle substance.
It's slowly coming back, and I'm getting real excited about this book.
Oh my god, I
Hey.
know nothing about this book.
I'm
This
getting real
looks cool,
excited. I'm
he
getting
thought.
super excited.
Turning the can around in his hand, he suddenly remembered the $10 his mother had stuffed into his shirt pocket
Burning a hole.
after he danced. He turned to see the store owner standing in the doorway, his dark eyes wide with anger. "What are you doing back here?" he bellowed. I couldn't remember how you did the old man.
Chapter 7. Oh, this fucking dog. Trigger yipped loudly, startled by the man's booming voice. Evan gripped the leash, pulling Trigger close. How much is this? He asked, holding up the can of monster blood. What did the guy sound like? What did the owner sound like?
Old Man Rosenberger?
Okay.
Kinda?
Not for sale! Is that good?
Yeah.
Yeah. The owner said, lowering his voice, his mustache seeming to frown unpleasantly with the rest of his face. Huh? It was on the shelf here, Evan said, pointing to the shelf like an idiot. It's too old, the man insisted. Probably no good anymore. Well, I'll take it anyway. Probably no good? What?
It's expired.
It's expired monster blood.
It lost its potency.
I'll take it anyway, Evan said. Can I have it for less since it's so old, like you?
What is it?
Andy asked, Andy the girl, appearing in the doorway. I don't know, Evan told her. It looks cool. It's called Monster Blood. It's not for sale, the man insisted.
Is he gonna steal it?
I bet he is.
He's gonna totally
I bet
steal
Andy's
it.
gonna steal it.
Andy pushed
she's
past
a
him
hellion.
and took the can from Evan's hand. Ooh, I want one too, she said, turning the can around in her hand.
The can around in her hand.
There's only one, Evan told her. You sure? She began searching the shelves. It's no good, I'm telling you, the owner insisted, sounding exasperated. I need one too, Andy said to Evan. But didn't she take it out of his hand? Just take the one that he has.
Yeah, just take it.
Just steal it. You can obviously kick his
5-figure
ass.
discount.
Sorry, Evan replied, taking the can back. I saw it first. I'll buy it from you, Andy said. Why don't you two share it, the owner suggested.
You didn't want to sell it to them a minute
I know.
ago.
You
Oh,
mean
it's
you'll
too
sell
late.
it to us? Evan asked eagerly. The man shrugged and scratched his ear. How much? Evan asked. You sure you don't have another one? Andy demanded, going back to the shelf, pushing a pile of stuffed pandas out of her way. Or maybe two. I could keep one and give one to my cousin. $2, I guess, the man told Evan. But I'm telling you, it's no good. It's too old. I don't care, Evan said, reaching into his shirt pocket for the $10 bill. Well, don't bring it back to me complaining, the man said grumpily, and headed toward the cash register at the front of the store. A few minutes later, Evan walked out into the bright daylight carrying the blue can. Trigger panted excitedly, wagging his stubby tail, pleased to be out of the dark, dusty store.
Alright, where?
Top of left.
Alright. Andy followed them out, an unhappy expression on her face. You didn't buy the lunchbox? Evan asked.
Don't change the subject.
She snapped. Oh yeah, Sam Elliott.
I'll pay you $5 for it. Beef.
She reached for the can of Monster Blood. No way, Evan replied. He laughed. You really like to get your way, don't you?
I'm an only child, she said. What can I tell you? I'm spoiled.
Me too.
I have an idea.
Andy said it's more fun to do the other
It
voice.
is.
Pulling her bike off the storefront wall.
Let's share it.
Share it? Evan said, shaking his head. For sure. I'll share it the way you shared your bike.
You want to ride the bike home? Here.
She shoved it at him. No way, he said, pushing it back towards her. I wouldn't ride your stupid bike now. It's a girl's bike anyway.
It is not,
She insisted.
How is it a girl's bike?
Evan ignored the question and, pulling at Trigger's leash to keep the old dog moving, started walking back toward his aunt's.
How is it a girl's bike?
Andy repeated, walking the bike beside him.
Hey, I'm talking to you.
Feminism!
Tell you what, Evan said. Let's go back to my aunt's house and open up the can.
crossbars
I'll let
though.
you mess with it for a while. Oh, that sounded so dirty.
Ah.
Right page.
Oh. Gee, swell, Andy said sarcastically. You're a great guy, Evan. I know, he said, grinning.
Her voice is deep. It's a real deep voice.
I'm not doing voices.
Dane's too cool.
For school.
Here's one's Becca to like him.
Because I'm saved by the
I
bell.
already like him.
All right, Catherine.
Saved by the bell.
Catherine was seated in the back armchair in the living room when Evan arrived. Who is she talking to, he wondered, hearing her voice. She seemed to be arguing excitedly with someone. Leading Andy into the room, Evan saw that it was just Sarah Beth,
Her cat.
Sarah Beth, the black cat. As Evan entered, the cat turned and heartily walked out of the room. Catherine stared at Evan and Andy, a look of surprise in her face.
She's deaf.
Oh, this is Andy, Evan said, gesturing to his new friend. What have you got there? Catherine asked, ignoring Andy and reaching a large hand out for the blue can of Monster Blood. So it's blue and it's okay. Does it say Monster
It's very
It's a blue
important
can.
that it's blue.
The blue can.
Blood? Okay, very important. It's blue. Evan reluctantly handed it to her, frowning. She rolled it around in her hand, stopping to read the label, moving her lips as she read. She held the can for the longest time, seeming to study it carefully, then finally handed it back to Evan. All right, nosy bitch. As Evan took it back and started to his room with Andy, he heard Catherine say something to him in a low whisper. He couldn't quite hear what she said. It sounded like "be careful," but he wasn't sure. He turned to see Sarah Beth staring at him from the doorway, her yellow eyes glowing in a dim light. Spooky ass cat.
Damn cat. My aunt is completely deaf, Evan explained to Andy as they climbed the stairs.
Does that mean you can play your stereo as loud as you want?
Andy asked. I don't think Aunt Catherine has a stereo, Evan said.
That's too bad.
Yeah, why the fuck would she have
Andy
a
said.
stereo?
Yeah. Walking around Evan's
I like the
room,
vibrations.
pulling back the window curtains and looking down on Trigger, huddled unhappily in his dumb dog pen.
Is she really your great aunt?
Andy asked.
She doesn't look very old.
It's the black hair, Evan replied, setting the can of monster blood on the desk in the center of the room. It makes her look young and pretty.
Hey, look at all these old books on magic stuff.
Sorry.
Andy
Well, a
exclaimed.
great aunt would only be your grandparents' age. And if he's like 12, his grandparents are probably like
Oh, yeah.
60 something.
I don't understand.
And she
Or
said she
younger.
was a witch.
And she
So-
also said she was a witch.
Well,
and look,
yeah, fine.
guys, there's books of magic stuff.
I wonder why your aunt has all these.
She pulled one of the heavy old volumes from the shelf and blew away a layer of dust from the top.
Maybe your aunt plans to come up here and cast a spell on you while you're sleeping. Turn you into a newt.
Maybe, Evan replied, grinning. What is a newt anyway?
You don't know what a newt is?
It's a
Dumb
lizard.
kid.
Andy shrugged.
I know what it is.
Oh. Andy shrugged.
Some kind of lizard, I think.
She flipped through the yellowing pages of the old book.
I thought you said there was nothing to do here,
She told Evan.
You could read all these cool books.
Cool books.
I'm turning into a Patrick Warburton.
Thrills and chills, Evan said sarcastically. Replacing the book on the shelf, Andy came over to the desk and stood next to Evan, her eyes on the can of monster blood. Open it up. It's so old. It's probably all disgusting and rotten. I hope so, Evan said. I love disgusting, rotten things. He picked up the can and studied it. No instructions.
Instructions.
Just pull the top off, she said impatiently.
And drink it?
What? So much
Well,
innuendo in
it's a
this.
can. Fucking open the can. He tugged at it. It wouldn't budge. Maybe you need
Fuck
a...
already.
I know.
He tugged at it all right.
Ew. Maybe you need a can. Maybe you need a can opener or something, she said. Very helpful, he muttered, studying the label again. Look at this. No instructions, no ingredients, nothing. Of course not. It's monster blood,
Yeah,
she
there's one
exclaimed,
ingredient.
imitating Count Dracula.
Do it, Becca.
Why would he
No.
write that after?
It's monster blood.
It's monster blood.
She grabbed Evan's
well.
neck and pretended to strangle him.
Oh.
He laughed. Stop, you're not helping! And I'm so scared. He slammed the can down on the desktop, and the lid popped off. Hey, look, he cried. She let go of his neck, and they both peered inside the can.
Chapter 8.
It was filled with dog shit. The substance in... Sorry. Chapter 8. The substance inside the can was bright green. It shimmered like jello in the light from the ceiling fixture. Touch it, Andy said. But before Evan had a chance, she reached a finger in and poked it. It's cold, she said. Touch it. It's really cold. Evan poked it with his finger. It was cold. Thicker than jello. Heavier. He pushed his finger beneath the surface. When he pulled his finger out, it made a loud sucking noise.
Is this a metaphor for
It
something?
really is.
Everything in this book up to this point.
Two kids sticking
been a
their fingers
metaphor.
in stuff.
Gross, Andy said. Evan shrugged. I've seen worse.
I can't believe our
Oh.
whoopee cushion died.
Oh my
Yeah.
god.
We need it more than ever now.
I'll bet it glows in the dark, Andy said, hurrying over to the light switch by the door. It looks like that green that glows in the dark.
I'm
That's
just
how it's written.
picturing that she's describing her vagina.
She turned off the ceiling light, but late afternoon sunlight still poured in through the window curtains. Try the closet, she instructed excitedly.
Yeah, let's go in the closet together.
Evan carried the can into the closet. Andy followed her and closed the door. Yuck! Mothballs! She cried. I can't breathe. The monster blood definitely glowed in the dark. A circular ray of green light seemed to shine from the can. Wow, that's cool, Andy said, holding her nose to keep out the pungent aroma of mothballs. I've had other stuff that did this. Evan said. More than a little disappointed, guys. It was called alien stuff or yucky gloop, something like that.
Yucky glue.
Oh,
Gack.
come.
Gack.
Sounds like gack.
Yeah.
Sounds like gack.
It sounds exactly like
sounds
gack.
like gack. Really good to keep up with technology and kid stuff. Well, if you don't want it, I'll take it, Andy replied. You bitch. I didn't say I didn't want it, Evan said quickly. Let's get out of here, Andy begged. Evan pushed open the door and they rushed out of the closet, slamming the door shut behind them. Both of them sucked in the fresh air for a few seconds. Woo! I hate that smell, Evan declared. He looked around to see that Andy had taken a handful of monster blood from the can.
How big is that
Ew.
can?
How are you holding blood?
Is it like a Folgers can? Or?
It's like gack.
Well,
It's
we
all
realized
thick
it's
and
more
goopy.
like gack, so it's like, yeah.
Yeah.
It's something,
like
you
fart
know.
putty.
Yeah. It's how you become
Right?
Daredevil.
Everyone knows what I'm talking
or Alex
about.
Mack. It's usually, you know,
Alex Mack.
Alex Mack.
That's
Just
a good show.
liquefied
Yeah.
Alex
Really
Mack
good show.
in a can.
Ew. That was like solid liquid, though. That was like mercury.
Alan Strange was a good show, too. He was an alien.
Anyway, she squeezed it into her palm. It feels even colder outside the can, she
That doesn't
said,
make any sense.
grinning at him. Look, when you squeeze it flat, it pops right back. Oh,
Yeah, no?
Vagina
penis all
again.
over. Yeah, it probably bounces too. Oh, Evan sighed,
Ah.
unimpressed.
Mr. Sprinkles fell.
Try
Podcast
bouncing it
mascot.
against the floor. All those things bounce like rubber.
Andy rolled the glob of monster blood into a ball and dropped it to the floor. It bounced back up into her hand. She bounced it a little harder. Ugh.
And
This time it
harder.
rebounded against the wall and went flying out the bedroom door.
It really bounces well.
She said, chasing it out into the hall. Let's see if it stretches. She grabbed it with both hands and pulled, stretching it into a long strip. Yep, it stretches too. Big deal, Evan said. The stuff I had before bounced and stretched really well too. I thought this stuff was going to be different. It stays cold, even after it's been in your hand, Andy said, returning to the room.
I know I'm a joyless adult because the only thing I'm scared of so far is the mess they're gonna make. They're gonna make a mess.
They're going to throw it at the wall. It's going to
They're
leave a
gonna
grease
break
stain.
something.
That poor deaf old man is gonna have to clean it up.
Woman. No, she's a
but
man.
they really
She's a
describe
man.
her as
She's a man.
a dude
I think
in a
it's
dress.
I think it's a guy.
Evan glanced at the wall and noticed a dark round stain by the floorboard. Grease
Yep.
stain. Uh-oh, look, Andy, that stuff stains. Let's take it outside and toss it around, she suggested. Okay, he agreed. We'll go out back. That way Trigger won't be so lonely. Evan held out the can and Andy replaced the ball of monster blood. Then they headed downstairs and out the backyard where they were greeted by Trigger, who acted as if they'd been away for at least 20 years, which is weird because dogs don't live that long. The dog finally calmed down and sat down in the shade of a tree, panting noisily. Good boy!
That's fucked up.
Evan said softly, take it easy, old fella. Andy reached into the can and pulled out a green glob. Then Evan did the same. They rolled the stuff in their hands until they had 2 ball-shaped globs. Stop making that sound. They then began to play catch with them.
We need to get some gack so we can make gack noises.
Oh my god, yes. Buy some
Next time.
gack.
We'll look it up on Amazon, guys.
It's buy some gack on Amazon. Buy some more Surge while you're
Is
at
this
it.
where you like
It's amazing how they don't lose their shape, Andy said, tossing a green ball high in the air.
His balls.
Yes, it's balls. Evan shielded his eyes from the late afternoon sun and caught the ball with one hand. All this stuff is the same, he said. It isn't so special. Well, I think it's cool, Andy said defensively. Evan's next toss was too high. The green ball of gunk sailed over Andy's outstretched hands. How much is it?
$11.
Why does it only have 2 stars? What's wrong with people?
Let's read some
What are
reviews.
the bad reviews of Gak?
1 star. My 9-year-old bought a GAC 6-pack set today with her own dollars. Cost $29.99.
How did your 9-year-old get $30?
Did not mix, stretch, bounce. Simply crumbled and left her in tears.
Oh, your kid's stupid.
I don't usually rate any products, but this stuff is horrible. Nowhere on the commercial does it say the stuff will ruin your kid's clothes or stain the carpet. You're a fucking idiot.
It's horrible.
I used to have this apple pie scented GAC. It was the grossest smelling thing ever. Oh, it was so disgusting.
What happened to old-fashioned Silly Putty? I'm sorry, go on.
What happens next?
It's not silly putty.
I know, it's
It's
GAC.
GAC.
Well, this one's only $9. Sorry, go on.
I'm on the edge of my seat here. What happens next? Do they throw it again?
The green ball of gunk sailed over Andy's outstretched hands. Whoa! Andy cried. Sorry, Evan called. They both stared as the ball bounced once, twice, and landed right in front of Trigger. Startled, the dog jumped to his feet and lowered his nose to sniff it. No, boy,
Eat it,
Evan
eat it.
called. Leave it alone, boy.
Oh my god.
As disobedient as ever, as all dogs are in the Goosebumps universe, Trigger lowered his head and licked the glowing green ball. Yes. No, boy, drop, Evan
gonna
called,
die.
alarmed. He and Andy both lunged toward the dog, but they were too slow. Trigger picked up the ball of monster blood in his teeth and began chewing it.
Ew.
All right. No, Trigger! Evan shouted. Don't swallow it! Don't swallow! Trigger swallowed it.
Yeah.
Metaphor, you say?
Oh no!
Andy cried, balling her hands into fists at her sides.
Now there isn't enough left for us to share.
That's your first
Plus
thought?
your dog's poison.
Yeah.
But that wasn't what was troubling Evan.
Oh, no shit.
I was about to say even. He bent down and pried apart
Can
the
we name
dog's
him
jaws.
Yvonne?
The green blob was gone, swallowed. Stupid dog, Evan said softly, releasing the dog's mouth. He shook his head as troubling thoughts poured into his mind. What if the stuff makes Trigger sick? Evan wondered. What if the stuff is poison?
It probably is. Do you have time to keep going, or?
Not really.
All right. Bum, 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 bum.
Below Grade Level is a Cactus Radio production. You can contact us at podcast@cactusrodeo.com. Subscribe and follow on iTunes, Stitcher, and Spotify, and follow Cactus Rodeo on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter for more entertainment and updates.